Hi.
Hi, everyone.
I think we couldn't be more happy to be able to be here today. Who are we in the first place?
I'm Kara Kane. I am the head of the design profession at the Government Digital Service. I work for the UK government based in London. I'm American, if you haven't noticed my accent yet, but lived in the UK for a very long time. Martin?
I'm Martin Jordan. I'm head of design user research at the German federal government's digital service. And then with us here today as well is Victoria. She's there, who's working as a content designer at the Court and Tribunal Service in the UK. And we are kind of like running the international part of the international design government community together.
So we want to do a little bit of a recap about the community. If you are new, if this is your first conference, your first event, there's many of you that we've met many years ago that I recognize that have been at previous conferences, which is great. But yeah, we're now 7.5 years old. We've been doing this for a long time, and there's still so much energy and passion for it, which is just so exciting. We have grown a lot over those past 7.5 years. So we're about 4,400 people. We're from over 70 countries. And everyone in the community is a design-minded person working in public sector, in the government, anywhere in the world. So if there's people that you think should be in it, invite them. So everything started with this blog post. So in 2017, Martin and I were working together at the Government Digital Service, and our boss, Lou Down, had this idea, kind of pitched it to us, said we should do this international thing. We should bring together government designers around the world. So we published this blog post saying, is anyone else doing this? Is anyone interested in joining a community? There was a lot of interest, and it quickly built from there. So we started a mailing list. We started the Slack at that point, and we started our regular community calls. So our first topics were around capability building and building design mindsets. We then had our first event in 2018 in the summer in London. This is Lou, who I just mentioned, on stage doing a keynote. There were 200 of us that got together for the first time for a conference. And some people here, like Ani, have been attending these events since the beginning. Was there anyone else here that was at the London conference? If you could raise a hand. Yes, that's a lot. Nice. We also started to collect stories around kind of service transformation in government and the wider public sector in a publication called the Service Gazette. We've been asking you all to contribute to that, and we've been making them for the conferences. We published 2 newspapers in 2019, which was very ambitious of us. In 2019, we also ran an event in collaboration with the Scottish government. This was our second conference. This conference was all about the theme of participation and inclusive services. Was there anyone who was at that one? Hand up. A couple. Nice. Yes, Mariana. If 2019 wasn't big enough, with all the work that we were doing and events that we were running, we finished the year with our biggest event so far. This was a conference in collaboration with the Dutch government in their User Needs First community, which is a really big community of user-centered public servants. Was there anyone at that one? Okay, more. Nice. Then we had the pandemic, so we weren't doing in-person events, but we were continuing to have our conversations online, continuing to have calls. It took us until 2023 to get back together in person, but at a smaller scale. So we have collaborated many times with the Creative Bureaucracy Festival, which happens in Berlin every summer. In 2023, we ran this fishbowl session. This was the first time we started talking about the long slog of public sector transformation, which we'll talk a little bit about in a bit. We ran this panel with community members from Estonia, Italy, and the UK. Like a lot of our content, this conversation was recorded and is on our YouTube. Also, we ran a meetup alongside the Service Design Global Conference last year in Berlin. This was a really informal kind of unconference gathering for people working in the public sector, and we had about 6 countries represented there. We're always ambitious, always. So in 2023, we decided to run a 24-hour remote conference. It was actually 26 hours. We had 24 sessions, Each session was representing a different nation. That's actually where we, Martin and I both met Eze for the first time, because he helped organize the Sweden Hour. It's an incredible event. It's all recorded and it's online. Has anyone attended that one? A couple hours, many hours? And again, this year we went back to the Creative Bureaucracy Festival. If you haven't been, I highly recommend it. It's an incredible conference. Again in Berlin, and we ran a meetup with the GovStack organization and their user experience working group on global service patterns. Lawrence in the picture is back there, so if you want to talk about GovStack, you can go find him. And that brings us to today. So we've been anticipating this so much. I remember having conversations with Ani about some sort of conference, and the Estonians like, we want to do something. So it's really exciting that this is happening. It's the first face-to-face conference since 2019. Since that last one in Rotterdam. Yeah, it's been 5 years since a lot of us have been in the same room together. So there's a lot of new people that have joined since then. So welcome everyone. So now to get into the long slog. We use this quote a lot to talk about our community work. So borderless challenges and exponential opportunities. That's why we come together. There's so much that we can share and learn from each other, and we want to talk a little bit about the power of community in this talk. I'm going to hand over to Martin.
Yes. So the power of community is really vital because community is really totally essential to unleash as well these exponential opportunities that we continue to see, and more. So there's always already a hint towards like the GovStack global design patterns. We see how people across nations, across continents are collaborating. And one I think we're seeing there is that really we can be collectively dealing with this long slog of government transformation. And we're diving into that. And we have been doing this for a year, where we wanted to know what keeps us going. So as individuals, as groups of people, as organizations, as kind of like the different design functions continue to grow and mature as well. So what we recognized doing this now for getting closer to a decade, that some of the enthusiasm of the first kind of like years of doing services and government has worn off. So people realized, oh, this stuff is hard and it's exhausting. I have seen colleagues here and there burning out, taking a break, who couldn't do certain things anymore. So we wanted to understand like what does help to keep us going. So dealing with this kind of like hard and sometimes really tedious work. So we've been conducting last year research with about 60 people from 8 different countries, from all levels of government, essentially. And what we saw again and again is that designing public services isn't a sprint. So we might be running sprints like every 2 weeks or something, but the whole thing is rather kind of like a baton relay ultramarathon. And I'm not trained for ultramarathons. Maybe you are, but it is a very big challenge, right? So, and it means we all take over the baton from someone else, and then we go a mile or so, and then hand it to another person, or we take turns as well. And because you have seen this in your work, I'm pretty sure. So changing how a service works, kind of like end to end and front to back and across channels, like doesn't happen in a snap. It's nothing we can do overnight. It's nothing we can do probably like in a year's time. And the same applies as well to shaping policies that are giving kind of like the circumstances for services to happen. Instead, it may often take many people from different organizations, from different disciplines, and from different professions as well to change just one small thing that is part of a bigger whole. And here's one example from the UK. That's the Check Your State Pension Forecast service. So that's a UK government service that started transforming basically a decade ago. And the work is still ongoing because the scope continues to grow. And it's part of a wider journey for users. You can see this here at the top. It says part of plan your retirement income. And that's something they don't do when they suddenly turn 66, 67. It's something they start probably in the late 50s, in the 60s. So this is a service that people keep interacting with as well when they're getting closer to retirement, because they do calculations and all of that. And you can see that there are different steps involved. So that's a complex thing. And this is the shape of the service where it's about the state pension. And the service team in the last few years, they started integrating as well private pension. So having a whole overview of like what to expect. So this is just like one service example, one service area where the work has been ongoing for many years. Hundreds of people have been involved and various government organizations have been collaborating to work on this together. Because what we see is that building digital transactions is often fast and sometimes it's even easy, right? But then changing the rest of the service is most likely not. So we might have a really good deployment environment. We might be able to release new versions of the service like every week or whatever our increments are. And that might be useful. But when we are trying to redesign a letter, we tried to do this 2 years ago in German government. That was really hard. Equally, when you're trying to replace a legacy IT system, or if you're trying to get a revised piece of legislation in front of Parliament, for example, to get rid of wet signatures, for example, that can take months or years. So in German government, we are right now preparing some change of legislation related to legal services, and this will unlock things, but we really have to be patient and wait for that. And here's one example from last year from the UK, where some things took 11 years. So this is a tweet from Simon Manby, and he was saying this last September. He's saying, just us in the House of Lords, watching third reading of the House of Attorney, the passing combination of 11 years of iterative work from a lot of amazing people. Now the real work starts. So you can see, like, some people have been carrying the baton. I think he has been there for many, many years. And others, I heard them saying like, oh yeah, we had quite a bit of churn when it comes to the service designers. We had quite a few service designers who were like trying to crack the nuts here and there. And then another person had to come in and continue. And we need to keep this quote from Sid Harrell in mind, where she wrote, "This work is hard. I like to think of it as a collaborative 50-year project to enable our government to use technology as a tool to serve better the public. 50 years is a long time. Whatever project you take on, you'll be carrying some of the weight of that timeline and that go on." So Sid currently is the Chief Digital Service Officer of the City and County of San Francisco. You might have seen the book, and I have been wondering when I read that, how much have I been prepared for carrying such a weight of such project, and why did no one tell me when I signed up and applied for my role? So whatever the number of years, often services aren't designed by just one group, but often like multiple generations of teams. So we have to very much understand different timeframes. We have to adjust to them and very carefully as well design handovers, or as well as Vicky was writing the other day, anti-handovers. So if you want to talk about anti-handovers, talk to Vicky. So there's a really good illustration from Dan Hill's seminal book, Dark and Trojan Horses, which also has really strong links to Helsinki and to the influential Helsinki Design Lab from more than a decade ago. So we've been adapting a model from that book where you see different pace layers, as we call them. So at the very bottom, you see the nature of government, and all the little arrows, they indicate the speed of change. So nature of government, very little change. And that's probably good for stability reasons, right? And then on the other end of the spectrum, you have team strengths where a lot of things change every week or every 2 weeks, whatever your case is. And then we have the culture of government. We have seen some change in the last decade or so. We have governance infrastructure. That's also like moving very slowly. We've been dealing with digital identity in Germany in the past few years, and like changing some of the digital infrastructure. That's really, really tricky. And then we have election cycles, funding cycles. That's probably in the kind of like 4 or 5 year range, something like that. You have your annual objectives as an individual, as a team, as an organization, quarterly objectives. So then things are moving a bit faster there again. But rarely all these different pace layers align in your favor. So most likely you have to first understand them. What do they look like in the context of your work? And then you have to work with them. You have to understand how fast a certain thing can move, like that legislation for the power of attorney service, and then figure out what to really do with that.
That's why this work is really hard. So often designing public services can be or is difficult, slow, and frustrating. So we have these frameworks that we've kind of been working on to help us talk about these things, and for us to all like think about and kind of give us the context and help us think about our work in this wider context, in kind of macro lens. So this is another framework that we wanted to introduce and share with you. So this is an attempt to visualize these different forces that we're calling them, these different things that play with you in your work and the change that you're trying to do. So in the middle, there is you. At the top, there's the politics that often comes down to you, that really sets the context for your work, and it sets the boundaries of the work, of kind of what you can do, what you're being asked to do. Then there's the organization that you belong to. And then on the other side is the service. So the thing that you are working on, the context of service design, that's the service that you're working on, or the service area that you're working in. Depending on lots of different factors, different circumstances, luck, hopefully you're able to have some influence in your organization. Hopefully a bit more, you can influence your service or the service area that you're working on. But then there's this other thing that we've highlighted in green, which is community. So that is the thing that's kind of permeating around you, it might be a community that's part of your organization. It might be like, I can't pronounce, Yilkis Motolala, I'll try again later. That is kind of across multiple organizations. Maybe it's within your service, but we think that community is so vital when dealing with all of these forces, all of this change, all of this long slog that we are working on. And the long slog, we haven't really explained what we mean by long slog. So a slog is like something that's hard to get through. And being a long slog, it means that we're dealing with complex change within a complex system. So that is government. That is the work that we are doing. We often say to each other, at least in the UK government design circle, we use this phrase "keep going." I think Ben Holiday, who used to be a design leader in government, started saying that, and a lot of us have continued to say it. Just keep going. But what does that really mean? Like, how do you keep going? How do we support each other? Is it maintainable? As you mentioned, we've seen each other burn out. So how do we continue to kind of do this work? How do we hand over? What does that baton toss look like through our years of service and the different services that we work on, the different organizations that we work in? So we have been collecting what we're calling recipes. So these are things that we think can help build resilience to create change. I'm not going to go into them in detail, but I will kind of quickly give an overview of them. And we think it's important to point out that not everyone can have like the influence or the leadership level to do these things in the organization. But we think that there's so many things that we can do as designers at every level in our organizations. So the 5 recipes, they're all written in more detail in a service gazette that we've created for this conference. It's not here yet, it's coming. We've also done a longer talk on this where there's more detail. But the first one is offer a tool that multiplies. Then we have make yourself useful. Communities are the glue. Be ready to use the window, and let's try again. So for example, make yourself useful. By that, we mean that you're in a situation where you have a new stakeholder that you really want to build a good relationship with. You're not really able to do the type of work that you want to do with them yet. They're like not so open to maybe your designerly ways of working. So you kind of just have to make yourself useful, do what they're going to get excited about you doing. Just kind of do something that you can deliver. Even if it's not the thing that you want to do, just like make yourself useful, do it. And it's all about building that relationship with that person, with that stakeholder, so that you can build their trust and then be able to kind of pitch work to them. So you have their trust, and then maybe they'll be more open to the types of things that you think will have more of an influence and can create more change. So it's about just doing what you need to do in the moment in order to kind of have that future view of what could be possible. Be ready to use the window is another example. So if we think about those pace layers that Martin showed, if you think about something like an election cycle, so for us in the UK government, we just had an election, and you always have to have these like kind of ideas or projects, things that you want to pitch like in your back pocket. Like, okay, the election is over, we have a new government, we have new ministers. What are you going to bring to them? And that could be an idea from 5 years ago. It could be from a month ago, but you need to be ready when you have that opportunity, when you meet that person, when you're in the same room, when you're invited to the table, you need to be ready to kind of use that opportunity to pitch and yeah, get that going. So as I said, when I showed this before, we really believe that community is really key in all of this. And as we've been kind of delivering this long slog talk and kind of building on it, we've been focusing on the community aspect of it. So how do we really do this together? What does that look like? We think the answer is community, but we really wanted to dissect what that means and what the tangible benefits of communities are, and show how communities can help us in order to help all of us make the case for this way of working.
So now we're bringing you 5 more things. So what is it that community is actually doing? So examples of very practical community work. So first up, community work is knowledge management. So because communities help us remember. Public service transformation, systems change, all of that like take a very long time. So it's really essential that our organizations have a memory, right, of all the things that they have done so far. Because otherwise we might do things twice or 3 times or 4 times, including the mistakes. So it's very vital that we have mechanisms for organizational memory, and that is related to knowledge management. So one great example, quite a few examples in here, but you might have more. You might share back to us as well more examples from other countries, which would be great. So one example is design history. So design histories, that's kind of like a blog that a team is creating, and it features posts and updates describing what the team has been doing. So that could be kind of like new feature development, this could be iteration of stuff, it could be findings from user research. So all of that bundled together, and it will contain content that will be very useful kind of like in 1 year time, 4 years time, and so on. So here's an example from the Becoming a Teacher service, and this accumulates basically the work of at least like 3, 4, 5 years. So people who are joining the team, or someone who's been not really being close to the project, they can have a look at what has been done and why certain decisions were made in a certain way. It's a very, very handy thing. So you can easily set up, there's all the code available on the internet to set up your own design history to do this with your team, for example. That's a great way of building knowledge management. More generally, somewhat related, blogging we've seen is very vital for knowledge management. So there are literally thousands of blog posts from Gov designers from all around the world. And some folks, like our Italian colleagues, they have been blogging always like bilingual, always in Italian and always in English at the same time, which deepest respect for that. In Germany, we're not really doing this much. We should be doing this. And I don't know what you experience, but because they are really strong government domains, often certain content that comes up really quickly. I'm like Googling a thing and it shows the thing from some government blog post. I'm like, oh, okay, that's very handy. That's a good resource. So, and the authors, they might be physically either very far away, or they might have even left their role in government. But all the things that they learned, you can read through the blog post that they have been putting out there. So that's a very powerful thing. So this invitation is an invitation to just blog more, to leave as well some things behind, some breadcrumbs for the designers coming after you.
So the next one is that community work is capability building. So when we're dealing with these complex systems that we're working in, we always have to continue to learn as a team, as designers, but we're also building our team. So as we're doing this work, we're getting more buy-in for it. Maybe our team is growing, we're bringing in new people. We're always having to build that capability, whether it's through like an onboarding process or just that continuous learning that we all have to do. Our skills have to rise to the challenge of what we're working on. And we can do this in communities. So we can learn through our communities, through sharing, and through making things together. So one example is through training. So another UK example, but we used to have training that was run kind of centrally from the government digital service. So we kind of had these established courses, and then that kind of training function went away, but the community picked it up. So our user research and our design courses continue to be delivered, 5 years later after that central capability was ended. These courses still have lives around UK government because we have experienced designers and researchers who have taken that material and have run it for the community. So they run it within their departments. They invite other people in to join. So we have capability being delivered by the community for the community for free. We also capture so much material within this community. So we have we have recordings, but we also have case studies, we have tips and tricks, we have design histories that Martin mentioned. We know that community members continue to return to the recordings that we have on our YouTube, whether it's to seek out information, to find a case study, or just to find people to connect with. So go find that person, then look in Slack, look them up, and you can easily connect with them. Our international case study videos on the UK GovDesign YouTube channel have been seen more than 10,000 times now. So people are using that content, and through that, building capability, learning from each other. Next one.
Community work is end-to-end definition. So often we only see just a small part of the whole picture, right? So but we can come together and then we see so much more, including the many things that we were not aware even existed. So often kind of like a lot of like unknown unknowns. So communities basically allow us to assemble all the parts of the puzzle and allows us also to take many viewpoints. And one great example is service communities. So that was really vital a few years ago in UK government to figure out like what is the end-to-end offering in the first place. So that's kind of like communities, as it's in the name, around end-to-end services. So that was a way to understand how a service area like starting a business or employ someone actually works. So like, okay, we have a rough idea of what the user journey might be, but what is it that government is doing as a whole towards all of that? So how are different government initiatives? What kind of like data has been collected? Like what are the different pieces that we are all doing? And we have people in this room where they were like, oh, we have been running a call center for many years, and we just have to renew our contract with our contractor. And another government department was like, oh, we have to do the same thing. By the way, people who are calling us actually wanted to call you. So how do we could join forces and kind of like merge, for example, our call centers and contact centers? So that are conversations that happened in this room because people were able to like make sense of basically how the end-to-end service is actually designed today and also like shaping what a future state of the service could be. Somehow related to that is step-by-step navigation. You saw this earlier in the check-your-state pension example, and it's basically trying to put together all the things that users have to do into a navigational structure. That has been done by GovUK, but has been copied by other governments around the world and also other third sector organizations. And it's been also winning a design award, the D&AD Service Design Award back in 2019, which is quite nice. But it basically brings together all the things that users have to do. But in order to figure this out, the team on GovUK was tapping into the existing community to really do this at another pace. So they wouldn't be able to get all the information necessary, for example, in the space of import-export without community input. So they're relying massively on the community to make sense of all the things. So very much pulling this together.
So community work is also delivery coordination. So I think building on from that end-to-end service definition and service view, We're also looking across large service and policy areas, doing collective sense making to understand what good implementation is and could look like. So what could it look like, but then also where is it already happening? So by interacting with people, within communities, we can see what good looks like. Make the case for that, because we can say these people are doing it. We can then hopefully implement ourselves and then write our own case studies and share that. So 2 examples, I think just doing peer reviews and service assessments. We've seen this in lots of different countries across different levels of government, having these service assurance processes or peer reviews, looking at services as they're being made to kind of set quality standards, but doing that in a community-centered way. So reviewing each other's work across organizations to help everyone make things better. We've seen this a lot with platforms. So by platforms, I mean things like design systems, or in the UK government, we have something called gov.uk Notify, which is a way to send text messages and emails and letters to users. We've seen these either whole platforms or parts of these platforms being forked and used by other governments. So for example, Notify has been forked by the Canadian and French governments, even the German government as well, using parts of that. And we've seen through our community calls, people learning about each other's design systems. So during one of our calls, talking about the UK design system, the Australian then Gov design system team was on that call, saw a component that they needed, grabbed the component, and within a week they had added it to their system. This is our last one, and then we are wrapping up because we're running out of time.
Looking at the clock. So community work is culture building. I mean, no surprise. I think there's a lot that you have been taking potentially from the community. So by getting together and learning how our peers work, we reflect on our collective practices, right? We get inspiration for doing things differently, and we can also assess what we can shape for our teams, for our organizations, and for our environments. Of course, posters play a role. So posters on the move. So on the left, you see a photograph from a GovUK poster at the MindLab in Copenhagen back in 2016, when MindLab still existed. And then on the right, you see a photograph taken in Canada, and that includes some Australian and some UK and also Canadian posters. So posters have a role in kind of like shape how we see certain things, how we talk about stuff. That's the challenge of service transformation, not website redesign, for example. And I think the most community-powered posters are probably these. These are accessibility posters created by the UK Home Office some time ago, and I checked last night. They have been translated into 22 different languages, including Japanese, Hungarian, Turkish. So, and here you see some colleagues of mine looking at the German version someone had created, which is fantastic, and we use them in training every month. And then culture is also made tangible through stickers. I've seen various people putting the sticker from today onto their laptop, and others have like plenty other stickers, because our work can be really challenging. But like the stickers, on the one hand, they bring kind of like a dash of color, a bit of fun and joy to the work, but they're also really essential in the sense of culture, because when community members get together, they see what they have achieved, what they have delivered. So we have these mission patches potentially, right? But they can also express core values. So that one says user first, and this might be a very good conversation starter, or make a statement when you are in a room with a person who has potentially a different view on what matters. So you can have a conversation. And yeah, here's some mission patches that we have designed in German government. And then another vehicle for culture building has been again, UK Services Week. So that's an annual event now. Has been running for, I think, 6 years, I believe. And it's community organized. So it's focused on showcasing and building the skills in service design and service delivery. And basically, the organizers just create posters and stickers and kind of like the templates for things to run. And then everyone goes. And I think last year it was like 37 different organizations and 5,000 public servants all across the UK government, all levels of government participating, all creating content around a shared theme, around kind of like a shared vision of how to do that. Okay. Just to recap.
Final bits. So we talked about knowledge management, capability building, end-to-end definition, delivery coordination, and culture building. We'd love to hear more examples from you all, so it's less UK-centric. So please come chat to us. working in the open is so fundamental to all of this. I think we've really drilled that through our examples. But we have the opportunity here to really connect, collaborate, share, support each other within this community and our kind of local communities within our organizations. We have the opportunity to make new friends from around the world here. So I think we've had the tone set by Ani and Eze about how much we can learn from each other and meet each other these 2 days. And please, kind of join the Slack channel, join us with our calls, join us at our next events. Hopefully this newspaper will be arriving during the conference. It's somewhere here in town. So fingers crossed that it comes and you can all get a physical copy, but things will also be published online in the coming months. So yeah, please continue to be in the community. Please chat to us, use the hashtag GovDesign on social media. And we really look forward to talking to you and getting to know you all throughout the conference. Thank you so much.